Hi, welcome to the Indie Wine Podcast. My name is Matt Wood, and this is episode 97. I recently sat down and talked with Tony Coturri of Coturri Winery. Tony, of course, has been making natural wines, and by that he means wines with nothing added longer than anyone else in California. Since 1979 professionally, and for about 15 years prior to that, we had a wide-ranging discussion about the changes he's seen in natural wine and the larger wine world. Why no sulfur? Planting and maintaining a vineyard, visits by Robert Parker, watches, and how the current downturn of the wine business is different this time. And Tony's partner Susan joins us for some more conversation towards the end, all while drinking a 1977 unsulfured Valdegui that was amazing. We start off with a little tour of the winery before sitting down. On another note, I wanted to let everyone know that my friend Adam Huss of the Beyond Organic Wine podcast is throwing the inaugural Embracing Hybrid Grapes in California conference at UC Davis on January 26th. It'll have some guided tastings as well as panels and speeches, all based around hybrid grapes. Former podcast guest Matt Neese of North American Press, Deirdre Heeken of La Garagista, Aaron Rasmussen of American Wine Project, Nathan Held of Stonehill Winery, Adam Tolmack of the Ojai Vineyard, and Elaine Chuckin-Brown are just some of the guests. You can get tickets at embracinghybridgrapes.com. A reminder that I have a Patreon at patreon.com/IndieWinePodcast. A link is in the show notes also. If you're enjoying the podcast, any amount to help me keep telling wine stories ad-free and available for everyone is appreciated. It's all run independent, of course. Telling a friend or sharing on social media are great ways to help out too. Here we go.
I got the house built. Used to be a carport here. Okay. And then about the mid-60s, we built this garage, essentially. Sort of the Winchester House of Mystery here, not over the years. The original building was in here. So there was a wall there, so it was just like a two-car garage.
Okay.
And then in '77, I built this room in the back for winemaking, specifically. And then
Mostly for barrel storage or
barrel
case
storage
or
yeah,
everything?
Yeah, it was just extended home winemaking kind of thing.
Okay.
And then in '79, we got our permits to make the wine commercially, and we had to cut this notch in here to get the press in because it was just too. and this part was built in '79 when we started the commercial winery, and then this was built in '80. The winery ended here, and the press. There was going to be two press, but we did one press area there, so it's a traditional basket press, but with a hydraulic ram instead of the metal pipe, the metal thing in the middle. And this was added on to probably 82, 83.
Okay.
But we were very ambitious. We were going to have two pressing areas, but we never had it.
Never had to get there.
Yeah, thank God. So this press will hold 2 tons, which has always been fine for us. So.
Okay.
And the very, very first building, I literally built this as a kid in like 64, 65, we built a cinder block. And that was the first place that we actually stored wine in. And my father at that time had friends and he was making sausages. So we literally had sausages hanging in here along with wine barrels. It was a real kind of traditional style Italian,
Yeah.
when you had your wine and you did your sausage and all that. Mm-hmm. It's pretty messy in here.
Yeah.
So this was about 2 years ago. This was completely filled with wine. I had 900 cases, and at that time, going all the way back to the 1980 vintage. So I pretty much felt at that time either I had to start drinking, which I couldn't do. So we started selling off the wine. So most of the old bottles are sold off at this point.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna take out something that's probably pretty old for. See how it is. This is a 77 EMA. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's held up. Let's see what this guy looks like. Maybe.
Might need to
See how the color comes? See that? Watch. It starts getting darker. Let's see.
Yeah, as I said, maybe it just needs a
Some air.
Needs a little air. Yeah.
Wow, nose is solid, man.
Yeah, it smells good.
So this should be a 77 Gamay.
Okay.
That was actually grown up here on Sonoma Mountain. It was called Napa Gamay, which I think isn't a Gamay, but it's a
Valdegui. Yeah. Okay.
So this guy was, his name was Herb Bruning, and he, step back for a second. I started in '79, but as a commercial winery, but I was making wine all through the late '60s, through the '60s, and through the '70s. And one of the things that was kind of interesting is that there was a generation missing. And that would be the Second World War. So I was dealing with Herb Bruning and Val Rossi that were, when we were starting, they were in their late 50s, early 60s. And by the 70s, they were in their 70s, late 70s, going into their 80s. But there was nobody in between there.
Right.
And they either the sons never made it back, or they never came back to the farm.
People moved into the cities
and found
suburbs
jobs, and the training they had was obviously skills that you don't necessarily need on the farm anymore. So there was a gap of knowledge. The main thing we got was vineyards, because they were still growing grapes all through that period. And so there was a lot of other men, but one particularly was named, his name was Joe Miami. And he took care of Martini's Monte Rosa, 300 acres. And he did that for his career. He helped us put our vineyard in. He was an advisor on it. But he had that place, like I said, from the very beginning. In 300 acres, he had it pruned by the middle of February, and the first pass in the disc. I mean, he was just really, really, really old school, very, very old school. And in a way, it was a great opportunity with working with these older men, essentially. But at the same time, there was no advancement in the wine business, because the agricultural part is not stagnant, but you're just steady at it. So especially, you only plant a vineyard once in your lifetime, usually, or twice.
Yeah, hopefully.
So you take care of it. Whereas, the modern winemaking, as you were kind of alluding to here, is the '60s, is when Martini started. Mondavi started his winery, Robert Mondavi. And then a lot of the young winemakers learned under him, and then went out and started their own vineyards and wineries. Some of the great names in early California, or modern early California winemaking, were these guys in the '60s that eventually became the heroes of our winemaking. So I was born in '49, so I graduated from high school in '67. I was here in '61, so I saw the transition from a very small industry that really wasn't that popular in a sense.
Okay.
In the early '60s, the first half of the '60s. beverage and food and beverage people in hotels and stuff, it was still pretty much beer and spirits. And wine was considered kind of an ethnic thing, a cultural thing, but not really that important to the overall, business that they were doing. Another idea of it is I was back in Vermont, and there was a guy there that had a country store out in the middle of nowhere, and it was literally, he had fishing supplies, he had groceries, and he also had wine. And his mother started it and was buying wine, and Bordeaux, first growths in 1957 were $1.25, and California wine was 50 cents. And he had all this storage of all these old wines, and so that was the same thing in California. So really, I would say, for my upbringing in education, it was really the 60s and the winemakers of the 60s that we were hearing about, like Travis, whatever his name was, up on Mayacamas, and all the names that have become like familiar were just young men starting out.
Yeah, is that something you were kind of cognizant of at the time? Like you were hearing.
We heard there's names. I mean, really, the first real insight we got was, of course, the Judgment in Paris and all that. But we were friends with. Well, my father was friends with the people that owned Kenwood. And they're from San Francisco, and they're in the early 70s. I recently, if we call recently the last 5 years, I opened up a 1971 Kenwood Cabernet and a 1971 era of martinis, and they were very much alive. I mean, in those days, the alcohol levels were 12 and a half, 13, maybe pushing 13, and the only thing they added was sulfites. It was a very different look to the thing, because the wine was really it wasn't a superstar thing. It was just
was something for the table.
And then when we started in '79 as part of a diet, there was 13 wineries in Sonoma Valley.
Right.
And so, it was like, it was no marketing, because when people came to the wine country, they automatically picked me, all as among the other ones. So I built up a lot of clients, a lot of customers, just who were kind of wandering around. And obviously we were very involved in organics in the vineyard and making wines without any chemicals or preservatives added to them. And it wasn't even an issue, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, we're coming up, it's just like, hey, I like this wine. And, later, like in the last 10 years plus, people are specifically looking for wines without chemicals added to them. But in those days, it was a big issue on the wholesale level, but on the customer level, they were just looking for wine and they liked it, and that was it. But on the wholesale, I was considered, my first release was in '81, and so I went to market in '81. And it was like I was the most radical winemaker ever. Yeah. I was trying to change the face of things. I was, doing things and it was just making wine like my grandfather. And it seems so ironic to be classified so radical, but at the same time being so conservative. Because it was in '79, it wasn't a sleepy industry anymore, but it wasn't what's going to be, the powerhouse that it eventually came once in the mid '80s on, is when you start really seeing corporate interests coming into the valley and buying wineries and, Chateau Saint Jean about the same time we were. I think there were 78 starting, and then you really saw, in the changes, because it was simple. The guy on the tractor was the guy that owned the vineyards. You could talk to him, whereas the guy in the vineyard doesn't even know who owns the vineyard, anymore. But anyway.
Let me take you back to when the vineyard was planted and
shit. God damn it. Let me get.
You want me to get you?
I'll get it. I'll try again. Yeah, so we put the vineyard in '74, And in 74, it was still kind of, old school. We put in 454 vines per acre,
Okay.
which is 10 by 12 spacing. So each vine got 120 square feet of land to grow in. And I think now the standard, the minimum standard is 750 vines per acre.
Was that a tractor thing or
Right.
just, or
Yeah, well done. Because that's one of the things we did is we put in Zinfandel. Well, because we loved Zinfandel, but also because you would theoretically tractor it both ways, so you wouldn't have to have a vine road to deal with.
mm-hmm.
But given the terrain that our vineyard's at, we couldn't go both ways because it was too steep. So we put in terraces, but the terraces weren't bulldozed in; they were cut in using the disc. So at the first few years, it was steep, and the tractor and the disc would slide. We had to actually use a tractor as opposed to a wheeled tractor. We had to use
like
a
crawler,
track layer,
yeah.
and then eventually the through the years the ground evened out to make terraces. But the interesting thing is that when you put in terraces with tractors, you plant them on the inside of the cut. So when you cut them in like we did, the vine sits on the outside where it's constantly getting a lot of dirt and compost and humus in that spot. So it was a very traditional style of planting. We used the St. George rootstock, and then like I was saying, the clone from the Martini Ranch, which is the Goldstein clone, and then we had a center vineyard that we planted into a Riesling. But in those days, you couldn't get anything for white grapes. I mean, I'm sure there was like Stony Hill. There was some great producers of Chardonnays, but it wasn't considered like the thing you wanted to do. You wanted to put in red fruit, dark fruit, black fruit.
Yeah.
And so we took the Riesling out and planted it again with the St. George, but then we used the clone from the Cundy Ranch, which is another heritage clone. I don't remember the name of it.
Okay.
So there was heritage clones out there. So, I mean, it's, and the other feature of it, we irrigated it for the first 2 years to get it established. And then it's been dry farmed ever since.
It has. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess how have you changed the farming of it over the years? Has it changed much?
That's still very, very good. It's interesting because when we started in 79, we used cover crops, which were unknown at that point in vineyards. My brother had started his own vineyard business, and he was cover cropping. And a lot of the locals were saying, oh, my God, it's so expensive to grow grapes as it is, to put cover crops in. Oh, my God, what an expense. But within a very short amount of time, even conventional growers, people that were laying down Roundup and putting the different fungicides, mildicides on the vineyard, on the grapes, we're going into cover crops because it's so much less expensive and it's so much easier to deal with. And another point is that the bacteria in the soil make available the nutrients to the vines. Whereas if you're using chemical fertilizers, they go directly to the vine, and you don't have that intermediate step that really controls how much they get. So it made a big difference in terms of overall. And then through the years, it's the vineyard is in the final stages of its life for sure. I mean, it needs to be replanted, or vines have died or got tractor, hit it out. But it was kind of interesting in 2022, which was a very kind of difficult vintage because the second week of September in 22, we had 119 degrees, which I called 120 just to make it easy to talk about, for 5 days.
Yeah.
And that was the first time since 61 that we saw anything even close to that. And I thought that the vineyard was going to die. I mean, it was just stressed out to the max. And literally, I got some grapes about a quarter mile down Enterprise Road from here, and they were irrigated. They're still grown properly, but they had to put water on them every day to keep them alive.
Okay.
And this vineyard came through it and had a bountiful crop, which isn't surprising if you know the history of dry farming. But to put it in a different perspective, when we bought this property in '61, the average rainfall was 60 inches. And by 2018, we had a vintage where there was only 12 inches of rain that year. Mm-hmm. So in a very short amount of time, there's been a huge change in the weather patterns.
Yeah, because you're dealing with more heat also in that time, not just less rain.
Less rain, right. But, and I planted over 200 coastal redwoods that weren't cloned but grown from seed. And I probably have maybe a dozen left. Because the thing about redwoods, they need 60 inches of rain, but it never rains that much, but they capture the fog. And traditionally here, August was always a very foggy month. We always had fog coming in. And even Sebastopol had a tremendous amount of fog that it just doesn't have anymore. The fog's not coming in like it used to. It was like a moderate rainforest because of the fog, and now it's drying up. And it's hard for me to kind of put my head around the fact that a lot of people that I have respect for say that there is no climate change, that it's just a part of a cycle. But within the short amount of time that I've been here, I've seen tremendous changes in terms of what the weather's like. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we'll never know the answer because the answer is way past our lifetimes, but what's happening?
Yeah, and just being in the same place for the amount of time that you have and seeing that amount of change. I mean, it must be kind of really easy to see in some ways. You're just walking out your door and noticing that it's not the same as it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, that 22 vintage, was the first vintage where I could actually see the soil and see the change. It was friable. It started to break, whereas we have a high clay content in our soils here, high magnesium, low calcium, which just makes clay, and so clay goes from extremely wet to extremely dry in a very short amount of time. So that's why the cover crops, besides giving nutrients, are also getting oxygen, getting air into the soil to start opening up the clay to be able to get roots into it. Mm-hmm.
And you're still doing the cover crop and everything.
This year we couldn't get it in because we had such early rains, but there's a nice native grass growing out there this year. Mm-hmm. But also 22 was kind of another year for me. I mean, as I'm getting up in age and I really don't have a successor for the winery or the vineyard for that matter, I walked out there at the end of the harvest and there's that kind of ironically squirrels hide acorns in the vineyard, which is essentially planting oaks back in. Yeah. So, the last few years definitely been seeing more brambles, blackberries coming in. There's trees growing out there, and I just don't have, I guess, a bad excuse, but excuse nonetheless to be able to go out and grub them out. Mm-hmm. So I was out there lamenting my fate to the vineyard. And this is kind of a hoodoo thing, but the vineyard, I mean, you talk to your grapes, you talk to your vineyard, I mean, that in a funny kind of way, not even in a funny way, you talk to your instruments, you talk to these things and they respond to you. I mean, these aren't their precision, but they have their quirks. Yeah. Under certain sounds come in, they have their own life, I mean, and that, I mean, that's what you're an expert at it, not because of knowing how to use the equipment, but knowing how to work within the equipment and get the most out of it, which is not in any manual. You know that. Mm-hmm. Who else knows it? You don't know, right? Yeah. So the same thing, the vineyard, I mean, definitely talked back to me and said, hey, boss, it doesn't matter what happens. We did it. We had our 50 years here. if some young family comes in, starts bringing the vineyard back to where it was, all the better. But if not, we'll just go back to be in the forest again, and let that embrace it, because it's like, I mean, grapes they're exotic, so they're not native. There are some grapes native to California, but not the vinifera, and they had their time. And it was reassuring that cycle goes on,
Yeah, it's kind of a new chapter.
The new chapter, and whatever happens is what's supposed to happen.
Started the winery 79, right? Bonded. But you were making wine for what, 15 years or so before that?
Yeah, about since 63.
And that was just passed down, grandfather, father to you.
Right. Another aspect of that is during Prohibition times, on both sides of my family, grandfathers on both sides made wine in San Francisco for home consumption.
Yeah.
There was it's little known now because it's so many years later, but Prohibition ended in 32, so that's 70 million years ago. You could get a permit from City Hall and produce 200 gallons per household, because they really felt that if they took away the alcohol from the ethnic types, that they would go crazy and riot and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, so my grandfathers on both sides made wine all through Prohibition times.
Okay.
And then my Italian grandfather lived out in the marina, made wine all the way up until the late 50s, early 60s. Not as much as he did, but one of my earliest memories about wine is that he had a 60-gallon or 50-gallon barrel up on its head, and he just had the head on the top, and he had grapes fermenting inside.
Oh, okay.
And he had a little area underneath his dirt floor underneath his house. He had like 7 or 8 barrels in there. So, I mean, he was still doing it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the farmers during Prohibition times would bring grapes to San Francisco, to Oakland, and sell grapes literally going down the street and selling them to people that were making homemade wine.
Yeah, I've heard about or read about the trains and people trying to read the symbol on the side of the train to see where it's coming from. To like, hopefully it's coming from Cloverdale and not Lodi or something like that. Trying to decipher the codes,
the origin
on the cars,
right?
So that they can pick the grapes that they want, because I think every grape would turn into a Sonoma grape when it got to San Francisco.
When it got picked, yeah.
But they started out in different places,
right? Because I was doing marketing in Ohio, or even any place back east, and the produce trains were coming in with the little 32-pound boxes, cardboard boxes with little slats on them. And that also changed the face of California winemaking, because before Prohibition, we had Cabernet, we had Merlot, we had a lot of vinifera.
Yeah.
Zinfandel among them. Problem being is that Zinfandel especially had thin skins, so it couldn't take the 3 or 4 or 5 day trip on the trains. It would start breaking down. And that's why Alicante Boucher was planted, because it had the skins like leather, and also you could make a second wine out of it because it had so much color in it. And I was really privileged in 90, 91, and 92, or 91, 92, 93. There's a fellow in Kenwood, the Ubaldi family, that still had Alicante, and I was able to make it for 3 years.
Okay.
It made a really, really interesting wine.
Yeah, straight Alicante.
100% Alicante.
Okay.
And then I was doing a wine tasting in North Carolina, probably around 2010. And a fella came up to me, old guy at that point, and he had a bottle, and he said, "Tony," he had the first wine shop in Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
And so, specialized in wine. I mean, there was liquor stores, but it was a wine shop. And he had a bottle of the Alicante. He wanted to open it up with me. So at that point, 93, 17 years old?
Yeah.
And it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
That's amazing. I'm going to ask this question. It's not meant to sound provocative, but why no sulfur?
You know, for two sides to the story. You know, obviously I've talked about this a lot, so it's enhanced and it's kind of a sleepy story, but reality story. My grandfather made wine as part of his diet. You know, even though he was in San Francisco, he grew tomatoes. He had his vegetable garden, a couple fruit trees. He had family and friends that lived up in Lakeville, so he went up there for the summers to have fresh vegetables and fruit. And he always maintained that you never put anything on your plants, which I would infer your wine, that you wouldn't put in your mouth. You know, he also he made he smoked a little Toscano cigars, and when it got to the butts, he would soak them in water and use that as an insecticide.
Okay.
You know, so he was very much. It wasn't like he was a forebearer of organic. It was the way that he was taught. I mean, he lived he came to this country around the early 1900s, 1903 or 4. Ellis Island, you could look it up on the books, But anyway, that's what they did there. They grew their own food. They made their own wine. They grew their own produce, chickens and whatever, because they couldn't afford to buy it, And so he carried on that tradition. So not being, cognizant of it and saying, oh, look how he did it, but that's how he did it. And then, being a teenager in the 60s where, the hippie generation, but even more so, people were inquiring and questioning everything. Everything that could be questioned was questioned. And so when you look at wine and grapes, it's the same thing. You start thinking about it, especially in those days, there were still like books that weren't influenced by the technology of winemaking. There were just journals of people that made wine. There was one book called, his name was Joseph Wilde, and he had a radio show. God, and I lost the book in the early 60s.
Okay.
And he talked about making wine without chemicals as being natural, not natural in the sense that we're seeing natural wine, but as an adjunct because grapes had such growth of yeast on their skins, so you didn't need to add yeast to it, and they had such high acid levels and high alcohol levels that there was no need for it. And this was in the early 60s. He was already talking about it, and he had a great book that just by happenstance, I found it at Treehorn Books in Santa Rosa. It's tucked in there, and through the years, it was his transcripts from his radio shows.
Oh, wow.
So the two
Very
things,
cool.
you might want to look up that name, James Wilde. He was also very big. He was in Spain, so a lot of the book was about the Spanish War, the Revolution, but an awful lot of it too was about making wine and making wine purely. And I had an older mentor of mine named Frank Matheson, and he was making wine during that time, and he was the one that really said, look, you don't need to add sulfites because it's all in the grapes. So those two components, the family as wine being an adjunct to the diet, and you got to remember, in those days, a lot of people would drink wine before dinner and after dinner, and drink milk with dinner. I mean, it was still kind of that that change. That an awful lot of milk was being drunk in the 50s and 60s. I mean, it was just you even watch like Ozzie and Harriet and those shows. When they sit down for dinner, everybody has a glass of wine. Glass of milk. And that was just what everybody did. But anyway, obviously those days are long gone. Now we got lactose intolerant. But anyway, so that was really the emphasis for what I was doing. Yeah. And and the wines were different, obviously, but at the same time they weren't that different, But even now, all the way through is the European versus the California wines. On every level and economically, it was the same thing, and it kind of leads into the situation we find ourselves in now. But when California wines got above essentially French wines, they took a beating, and then they had to level off again. And now California wines are extremely more expensive than a lot of good French wines. And I think that the teeter-totter is kind of going back to so You have a bottle of wine that's $20, which means that the FOB on that to New York is $120, $10 a bottle.
Yeah.
And you go, oh my God, how can I do it? But then the consumer on the other end is drinking a $20 bottle of wine. And how many $20 bottles of wine can you get from Europe that are great? I mean, great everyday wine, well-made, tradition, et cetera, et cetera. And so, lots of ways, I think the reactions that we're having now is to the expense of California wines. And I know it's expensive to make wines, but the result is they're pulling vineyards out. So something, where's the balance point of that?
Right. It feels like something has to give.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when things were good, $35 bottles of wine, $27 bottles of wine, didn't seem that expensive. So a young fella in his late 20s, early 30s, could he afford to drink a $27 bottle of wine every day or a $32 bottle of wine? During COVID, they did. Yeah. But now I don't see it, I think there's been the real, everything's gotten expensive and you can't, I've got a lot of thoughts about this because obviously I thought about it when you coming up here, but the 2-3-year-old winemaker selling his wine for $45, it's a tough go.
Yeah.
I mean, because I've had young people come through here and you can't teach someone how to make wine. You can give them intuition and you can give them observance of being able to look at things, but there's no saying, well, this is how you do it. I mean, I have the way I do it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way to do it. But there are things that you have to look for and understand about it. And it goes, I have a very dear friend that had a vegetable grower up in east of Eureka, excellent grower. I mean, going to the farmer's market, supporting himself, growing vegetables. And he said, Tony, I want to start making wine and growing up. He had grapes on his property, but he never really did much with them, but he wanted to start learning. So he said, how do you know when to pick or, when to rack or whatever? And I said, well, Grady, it's the same as you as the vegetables and the fruit trees talk to you. They wake you up in the middle of the night and tell you they need something or there's time to do something. The same thing with wine. If you listen, wine talks, and it tells you. The same with a vineyard. Sure, there's experience in the vineyard and knowing when to pick, but the grapes talk to you loud and clear, and you have to listen. And I think that's what you have to listen to what they're having to say. And I always compare it to music. Like a guitarist can't be thinking about the next note. I mean, you have to play from your heart. You can't play from your head.
Right. Kind of a flow state.
Right. You have to divorce your thought, because once you start to think, you start to stumble. And I think it's the same thing with wine. Sure, there's technology of winemaking that you could read from Davis, and it tells you every season you need to rack the wine, and when you rack the wine, you should do this and that. But that's not the formula.
Yeah.
There is no formula for food. You can't say that you do this in these many weeks and this many months and these many years and bottle it, or you do whatever you're doing needs at a certain time. And there's nothing I could teach. You can't teach somebody that. They have to know it. They have to be involved with it and passionate from the heart, and let the heart listen to the wine. Let the heart taste the wine. Let the heart understand the process. And I think that's part of it. Sure, I mean, I'm sure that the alcohol kills off a lot of the bacteria and the living things in the wine, but sulfites definitely do. And I think that, we don't give, I think more and more we're hearing about it, but give a lot of credence to bacteria. We all talk about yeast, but in lots of ways, the bacteria is as important. Well, the malolactic fermentation is a bacterial change. We call it a fermentation to understand it, but it's not. And I think that's the other thing is that when conventional wineries use sulfites at the beginning, when the grapes come in, they kill off a lot of they stun or kill the yeast, but I also think that it influences the bacteria. And I think if the yeast have an imprint on the wine, I think the bacteria does also. And we have to foster good bacteria in our wine, and it really relates to us as human beings. We have to have a healthy biome, and that's bacteria. We could encourage that in wine to be self-preserving by not killing it. So these are really hippie things. I mean, in a sense, it's distillation of the 60s brought forward. And in lots of ways, science is proving this. I'm doing a collaboration with a scientist, and they're testing wines outside of the wine business. So they're taking bottles and they're testing them in St. Louis, where there's no influence of the industry. And what does sulfite do? And there's a definite link to wine that has sulfite and disturbing, and in some cases hurting the natural biome in our stomachs through the use of sulfites, because it's getting in there and making a difference. And now they're testing for it. But the industry as a whole has no interest in what sulfites do in wine other than, quote unquote, preserve it. And even, then it spills over into natural wine. And you have 100, what's going on. And how many wineries in California are doing it the way I do it, 100% nothing added to the wine. No cuvee difference. No, well, that needs it and that doesn't. There's very, very few.
Yeah.
Half dozen.
Yeah. Dozen maybe?
Yeah, dozen maybe. And it's, in a way I'm not saying, hey, this is what you got to do. This is like, we're going to take you out of the darkness no, this is the way I choose to do it. And I think an adult has the right. Well, we have the enviable right that if you're producing a food product, that it should be pure. And I'm giving them a choice. So they say, oh, the volatility, these wines aren't volatile. You're tasting a wine gazillion years old and it's not volatile.
No, it's not.
So it's and that's the other part of it is that. So I have people that work here and have come through here, and I take them through the crush. And this is we pick the grapes at a certain sugar acid level. And in terms of the big wine world, we're picking at very high sugars. But they have to be ripe, because that's probably that day-night difference in temperature, is huge here. Where you could always tell who's the tourist on the square. It's the guy in the T-shirt and shorts, because by 5 o'clock, even in July, they're going to be looking for some clothes to put on and a fire to sit in front of. So the acids are preserved by the coolness, and the the sun brings the sugar levels up. So we tend to pick high sugars in terms of what the wine world sometimes thinks of, but not in terms of the balance that the wine and sugar and acid has to be to make a stable wine. And that the other part of it is maturity, ripeness equals longevity. And that's really the key to it. And that's what I've learned through the years. But the other thing that I have to say, that I'm doing this for 46 years. Oh my God. That's only 46 times.
Yeah.
And how many there's still a ton of we've never seen weather the same in 46 years. Yeah. It's always different. So through experience, I can see if a fermentation is slowing down, or I can see if fermentation is going fast, but I can't predict it. I can't see it until it happens. So when you pick the grapes, then you see what the fermentation is going to be like. You don't know. But you have to keep your eye on it. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why we use the traditional method of pushing the caps down by hand. I have no tools for submerging the cap. It has to be done by hand 2, 3, 4 times a day.
So you can feel hot spots, cool spots,
exactly,
and
hot spots, cold spots, and put your nose in it. How does it smell? Does it need to be pushed down more? And it's also the involvement of the people making the wine. When you put your hand in it, the hand is a delicate instrument. I mean, it feels things. It feels the heat. It feels the cold, but also your essence, your bacteria, your oils are getting into the wine. It's making it yours, and that's a huge thing. I mean, that is. To me, that's why you do make wine. I mean, it is to be involved in it. Cheese makers, bread makers, kombucha, anything that has to do with fermentation, they're involved. So you know the bread that's hand kneaded as opposed to the bread that's been kneaded by a machine.
Yeah.
Same day, same dough are completely different. Completely different. And it's getting the essence of the person. Same thing when you're picking vegetables or whatever. It's getting that essence into it because that's what you do. And, you know, and not even in a funny way, you do the same thing. You touch these instruments. You don't wipe them off. Your essence, these are your tools, and they're personalized to you.
Yeah, you get that human interaction with them.
And, you know, the last few years, I used to be into cars. I am still into cars, but physically I can't do it as like I used to in motorcycles and have some great cars through my lifetime. So I've been getting into watches and clocks.
Yeah.
And, you know, and we all think of, because we kind of grew up with this clock, you know, the iPhone clock, which is nothing more accurate. But we also worked, you know, with quartz with the batteries, and I'm really into clocks now. I have two automatic watches. I mean, they're self-winding, but the watch has its own life too. You know, and being hooked up to you. I mean, I've been working on this watch from the very beginning for almost 3 years, and I just got this Navajo a watch band on it. So the watch is complete, and the watch is it's called a King Seiko. It was made from the 60s to the middle of the 70s. Seiko watches, they have the I don't know if you're into watches, but everybody hears about it.
Yeah.
Seiko watches, which is a very good standard brand. It had a competition within the company. They had two separate factories. One was making the Grand Seiko, and one was making the King Seiko. Okay. And then after an amount of time, one of them won, which was the Grand Seiko, which they still made. Now the King Seiko was stopped. They're redoing it, but this is an original King Seiko that was made in 1972, and the watch band is from so this is a period piece that took a long time to get together.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So it has it beats at a higher note. I mean, it's a watch that would have been the Grand Seiko.
Yeah, but the band's beautiful too.
Isn't it neat? I mean, most of the time when you see Navajo bands like that, they're hooked up to quartz watches, battery watches. So, but this is totally a period piece.
Yeah.
So it's like, there again, it goes back to the cars. Now, there's a lot of hot rodders that are making cars. They're buying a car from the 60s, a hot rod that was the 60s and stuck in a barn for a gazillion years, and then they're restoring it, but they're only using parts from the time that it was first made. Yeah. And that's, you know, because you can't build cars better than what's being made. I mean, Teslas are, if you want to be a fast car, the fastest car is a Tesla Plaid. I mean, there's nothing faster. I mean, the electric Teslas go as fast as physically possible. The reason why they can't go any faster is because of physics. I mean, it's going. So there's no sense in trying to build a internal combustion motor now that's going to be the fastest car because they don't exist. So it's going back and looking through a microscope at the time. And and another thing that I just found out about, which is really great, is they talk about plus one year. So they're restoring the 60s cars, which were my cars. I had a 65 GTO and a 69 GTO. They're restoring the 65 GTO as it was. First, they restore it as it was from the factory.
Oh, okay.
And then, so what people would do in 65, they'd buy the car, get it out of the showroom, and then bring it to a speed shop and enhance it. So they're doing the same thing, building the car to stock specifications, and then finding speed equipment from those years to enhance the car.
Oh, wow.
So it's like I mean, and I know you appreciate that because you love the history of wine. It's the same thing that they're doing with cars now, because there's no sense in trying to beat, a demon with those Dodges with they're like 1,000 horsepower. I mean, it's impossible. So they're building something that is equivalent in what somebody can still do in their garage. Yeah. And I think that's the same thing with wine, is that you can make wine. You don't have to buy wine. You can buy some grapes and try it out. I mean, be part of the cycle.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about some of the difficulties in selling wines those first years, or how people viewed the natural wines or wines without sulfur and anything else. And I've heard you say before, I guess sometimes you'd tell the people after maybe they bought the wines, or after they taste them and decided to buy two cases.
Right. When I first went into the marketplace, I was really excited and passionate about what we were doing. So I talked a lot about the organic aspect of growing grapes, which in 81 was still fairly kind of what's going on here, because you got to remember that the 60s were really the incubator for organic. But what happened more times than not is some guy would go to the conventional farmer's market and buy vegetables and fruit. God damn it. And magically, watch your stuff there, magically the vegetables and fruit would become organic on the right out. So in 81 or even 79, there was a lot of skepticism about organic, in that was it just something that people did as a fad? Was there any realness to it? And we saw it from 2 points of view there too. One, obviously, stewardship of the land and trying to make things better, which would glaze most people's eyes over. But the other factor of it is that properly grown fruit, obviously organically, or if you want to get into biodynamics or whatever system you want, as long as it's not using synthetics, makes better wine. So there's wineries. I don't think so much anymore because it's more commonplace. But when we were getting really going in the mid 80s and 90s, there was wineries that were conventional in lots of ways, but sought properly grown organic fruit because it was easier to use in the winery. One of the main things is that when you're using organic fruit, especially if you take a tomato and have a very sharp knife and cut it, the only moisture that comes out are the cells that actually got cut. But in a conventionally grown tomato, when you cut it, the whole tomato breaks down. And it's the same thing with grapes. When you have properly grown organic fruit, when it gets into the winery, you don't have the breakdown of the skins and all the material in the grapes to become just sediment or dirtiness. Is that it's a lot cleaner using properly grown fruit. And so that was another point that I've always kind of run concurrently, is that, we're hippies and we're stewards and all that. But as important to me is that properly grown fruit is better than conventionally grown fruit, and noticeably better. And I think that was sort of the dual thing, because we are in a business. It isn't like, it's a free-for-all and you just make wine and you give it away. No, you have to somehow try to, which is very hard, to make a living doing this, over time. Because, the fads in the wine business, the economics of the wine business. I mean, even to the point, like I was in Louisville and a Toyota plant closed down up there and influenced the wine market. There was less sales because those workers weren't buying wine because they're out of business. They didn't work anymore. So the regional differences in economy, national and international now makes a huge difference. And so you have to have an edge to keep going. But, it's kind of a business that, is more of a lifestyle than it is getting rich.
Sure.
You live your life.
Yeah. One thing that really struck me when I talked to you a couple months ago was kind of the influence of Robert Parker, which I was not expecting that, but I'd love to sort of
sure
hear more about that, or how that happened?
Well, I think Robert Parker probably was in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s he started.
I think
early 80s maybe.
Yeah, I mean the 82 Bordeaux I think was I think him kind of calling that as a vintage was the thing that
the wine advocate he started writing. Yeah, so he would do the individual monthly, and then he also would do the big books. I don't know if they're in the other room, but so I think in the first one he wrote us up. He came here. I mean, he actually came here. Really nice guy. Came up in an old VW Bug and shorts, and just a guy just like we're sitting here. We could sit and talk for hours, and we did. And he was very knowledgeable about things. He knew Alicante, they call it the medic, the doctor in Bordeaux. I think I told you.
Okay, yeah.
So he said, him and his wife were helping a Bordeaux vineyard pick their grapes. And his wife said, hey, he went away to do an interview or to taste the wine. And his wife kept picking. And then when he came back, his wife said, hey, come over here, Bob, what's this? And it was an Alicante vine, and they called it the doctor. The I don't know how to pronounce it in French, but for color
point taken.
To boost up the color, in the same way that they used Algerian wine to blend into French wine to give it strength, especially in cold years.
Yeah,
which that was a downfall too of a lot of the French wines, is that when they couldn't get Algerian wine, probably in the mid '60s, or '70s.
Yeah,
because when it become Islam, they pulled them all up. But anyway, So Parker wrote us up, gave us some. I mean, mid '90s scores. I mean, it was like, and he really appreciated the fact of what we're trying to do in the vineyard and in the winery. And he said that who could fault us for, how could you find fault with someone that's trying to do it this way? Sure, sometimes the wines aren't what you expect, or, but they're out there trying, and he carefully wrote these articles. He didn't say, hey man, every person that drinks wine should go buy a bottle of Coturri. He said, look, these wines aren't for everyone. And that was, I could get the book. He said, these are for adventurous wine drinkers that can see what's going on. Either see right now what's going on and see what the future is going to be for these wines. Have enough experience to know what a young wine tastes like and and where they're going. And you got to remember that conventional wines aren't made for aging. I mean, they kind of do, they kind of don't, but they're mostly made to be drunk upon release. And our wines always were high in acids that made them tough for people that weren't used to it. But anyway, long story short, so he wrote these things very carefully. But people would look at the wine, look at the name, and look at the scores, and not read the article about it. And he literally, because in those days it was all done by mail in 1985.
Yeah.
So and I think they started out in Delaware or somewhere.
Yeah, Maryland. Yeah,
and the post as they came across the country, I'd get phone calls wanting the wine.
Right. Yeah.
And then one day, somebody called up and he said, "Yeah, I bought a bottle of your Zinfandel because Parker gave it such high, and the wine is sweet, and it's like not what I expected." And I said, I don't have any control over Parker. You read the review, and that I mean, it was like blind allegiance, like I think the Wine Spectator is stronger on that way because they're more conventional in what they taste. They don't really go into the deep recesses of craft wines. So, it's not unusual probably not anymore, but it used to be people would literally walk into the wine shop with the Wine Spectator and to some degree the Advocate, say, I want this wine.
Yeah.
And the guy said, if it was a good wine shop, he said, why would I carry that wine? I have a wine. If it was a French wine, I have a wine that was made from a winery right next door to that one. And if the one you want is $100, this one's $40, and it's exactly the same or better. But people don't buy wine; they buy labels. And this is all kind of old school wine business, but I think it's the same still. talked to a young couple that came from New York, and now we're seeing obviously so-called natural wine people are, oh, I only drink natural wine, and I got heard about you, and I got to come. Okay. And they said, these are thoughtful people. And he said that in New York, when we go to a party or to like a cocktail party with not a wine tasting, but you're just drinking wine and some crackers.
Yeah.
There's 5 brands that everybody buys because everybody acknowledges the fact that those are the natural wines. So if you brought in a weird name, they say, "Whoa, how do we know?"
Yeah.
It's already become institutional. Here it is. These, I don't know, maybe there's 10, maybe there's 3. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But there's X amount of wines that are acknowledged to be natural wines, and if you show up somewhere, you're a natural wine guy.
Okay.
And so, we went all the way from nothing existing even close to that to a codified system now where if you want to be acknowledged as drinking natural wines, this is what you have to be drinking.
Yeah. How's that feel to you, having made that style of wine for so long?
It's interesting because I never really felt part of it, but obviously being, the poor man that I am, we all, when it came out, I said, yeah, that's it, right? Godfather of natural wine. Oh, yeah. And, in the early days, that was fine. There used to be a wine tasting down in San Francisco at the old, a place on Folsom, Tuar.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that
Tuar,
place?
yeah.
And they used to do the Californiation natural wine tasting there. I don't know if you remember those.
I never went to it, but I know of it.
So when it was there for the first one, and we were the only ones with Zinfandel. Zinfandel was not even. So there you have within the codification of natural wine, Zinfandel wasn't one of them because one is extremely concentrated and 2, it's high alcohol, dark color. All the things that you don't want. You want light color. You want light flavors. You want low alcohol. It was already starting then because they looked at French wine. They looked at other wines and said, well, these wines are under 11% alcohol, so we should be doing that. And they're not understanding that those 11% alcohol, they hung them out to the middle of October to get 11% alcohol. It wasn't like they were picking in August. They were picking late in the year. Same thing with the Austrians. There's a beautiful winery there. I forget the name. All their wines are over 13%, but they're hanging them until the storm is like at the horizon and then picking. Ripeness is the key. And I think that, to me, is the biggest disadvantage and fault of the so-called natural wines is they're picking them too early. Like if you look at numbers, pHs of white wines at 3.3 and red wines at 3.6 at harvest are typical no matter who you are. And it's at the same time now it's typical to see white wines under 3 and red wines pushing 3 rather than letting them get ripe. And I think a lot of the problems adds into the problems of why you have a $45 bottle of wine that you don't really want to drink. It's not attractive. I think a wine should be attractive. Even this old guy here is still attractive. You want to drink it.
Yeah.
I get way off. I'm sorry that I ramble on.
No. It's wonderful. In your opinion, what does picking in those levels, what does that do to the wines over time,
Okay, so there's just like the sugars ripen, the acids ripen too. There's acids in wine that are like olives, really bitter. There's all acids in wines that are sour. There's acids in wines that have off flavors. But as the grape ripens through the season, those acids disappear. They ripen out. They fall to the side. So if you pick those grapes when those acids are still present, they're going to be in the wine, but they don't have longevity. So the wine will get to a certain point and the acid will fall out. And that's the beauty of tannin, right? It has a very long oxidation. It doesn't go away really quickly, but these acids tend to go away quickly. Same thing with Zinfandel. doesn't have a lot of tannin, but it has high acidity. But those acids have to be ripe acidities. And a good 5-year-old, 6-year-old Zinfandel is a pretty good bet. It's going to be at a nice place to drink. That doesn't mean it's going to die at 5 or 6, 15 years, 16 years, 18 years on a Zinfandel. That's probably it. We're at 18 years on a good cab. It's still a baby. It's just starting out. I mean, it's still got a lot of baby fat on it, but it's being mindful of what ripeness is. What are the, there was a vineyard up in Hopland that I used to work with. And the winemakers said that, I want to pick the grapes on Saturday. And they said, well, they're 19. We said, that's what I want them at. I want them at 19. So they started picking them. And then the winemaker was going through the bins, throwing out the green fruit. And they said, wait a minute, what are you doing? Well, I'm throwing out the green fruit. That's what you wanted. And it's like letting the vineyard get ripe, not individual bunches get ripe, but the whole vineyard has to be ripe. And that, we can't afford select pick. And I think in lots of ways, except for very rare instances, I don't think that select picking is really what wine's about. It's about the little vine over in the corner that looks like this, and it's got 2 bunches on it, but you don't know what that does to the whole cuvee.
Yeah.
What it brings into it,
And that's kind of in a way, Zinfandel kind of in a nutshell.
Right.
Right. Like kind of
in a coconut
green,
shell.
Might be raisins. Might be
right. So
perfect.
So you push the sugar levels up as high as you dare, so that you make up for the acids at the back end. So many times, sweetness in a wine covers up acidity. And once the sweetness dies down, especially when you drink wine that are in the fermenter or right out of the press, it tastes great. Oh my God. But the acid levels are so high that it really hurts your stomach. We should taste, we'll when we're done here, we can taste some, taste of the 25s. And I'm getting ready to bottle the 24s. We should taste those. That'll be fun for you to try.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, the whole thing, I guess we're kind of leading to it. I might as well spit it out. Natural wine. What is natural wine? Natural wine is a wine made with nothing added. Period. That's all. So if you add something to it, it's not a natural wine. I mean, it's like definition. But somehow, and you see it and you know it, that there's winemakers that relish the fact that they're putting sulfite. They think that putting sulfite in their wine makes it a better wine, and they call themselves natural winemakers. Can't be, my opinion. But anybody's opinion. I mean, what do words mean? What does the word natural mean? Does it mean almost natural, or does it mean that you could add anything you want because you call yourself something? Is sulfite the end all be all? I mean, what's worse than sulfite? Sulfite is a poison. I mean, you put it in water, it turns into a gas that'll suffocate you. Take the air out. It's an antioxidant. Gets into your lungs. It takes out the oxygen. That's what it's made for. That's what it does. So, I mean, I think that some people are judicious. I think that people know what they're doing and they have their own needs and wants. I think that if you're making wine and you're adding sulfite, you should really kind of figure out in the lab how much to add rather than, the traditional thing. I don't know if I've seen it plenty because fucking old bones in this, but like you'd pull up into a winery that I could give you a name and you'd know the name, and they have you're tipping the bins into the crusher, the mechanism, the conveyor belt that brings it into the crusher. Yeah. Either it's picked in boxes and it's dumped in, or there's 1 ton. Yeah,
the macro bins.
Bins are being, and there's a guy with a coffee can, and he's just putting scoops of sulfite in there. And I understand that still goes on because I've talked to someone that worked at wineries and is still doing it that way. So, if I did it, which I don't, but if I did, I would definitely kind of figure out, I think the good winemakers, say like Ridge, they don't just wholesale sulfite, they test the grapes. And they say, we see a potential issue here, and we're going to put this much parts per million of sulfite at the crush. But we'd rather use natural yeast. But in this incident, we need to add a little sulfur because whatever. Maybe the birds got a little ahead of the picking, and there's some VA growing in those punctured berries. Whatever the reason, but there should be a reason. There should be a real reason. I mean, it's like going to the doctor, and the doctor looks at you and says, "Hey, take these pills." Rather than the doctor said, "We're going to run some tests and say, well, you're low in this and high in that and this and that. You need these." I mean, that's if you're going to play science. If you're going to play science, you got to be scientific. So if you're going to put sulfite in wine, which I think brings it into the level of science, what do you do?
Yeah, and well, I think there are some that will add it to a cuvee if they feel like it needs it, but not on a, not wholesale, not at, to the wines, I guess, that they feel need it for whatever reason, whether it's
scientific
for damage
or instinctual. Yeah, like you hear so much. We only add sulfite at the bottling. So it's like we only take antibiotics when we're almost dead. You take antibiotics before you get what you're taking gets ahead of you. So if you're adding sulfite at the bottling, why is it getting ahead of you? What's because we're talking about a natural, a substance. It's a fermentation. It's human. Human beings are alive. Fermentations are alive. So you do something, you got to have a reason for it. And what's your reason? Well, we always do that. How many parts per million? We would always bring it up to 30 parts per million. Or we bring it to 15 parts per million. You know the numbers. So if you take a wine that had no sulfites added to it and you add 15 parts at bottling, that's nothing. And that is just magic dust. You hope that it's doing something. Because at 15 parts, there's nothing happening except the fact that you added something and gave it to a consumer that has to drink it. So, you're talking 30 parts, 35, 45. Or you're starting to see the action of sulfite. But if you're going to do sulfite, you do it from the beginning in a judicial way to get the sulfite level to a point where it's preserving the wine rather than make it all the way through and then put sulfite at the end.
Or it's not all bound up.
Yeah, what is it, But anyway, these are questions. There again, I was thinking before you came here, one of the things as you get older is that you relate your time to the present time. Like, well, when I was your age, you always say that, right? When I was your age. So if I'm 76 and you're 35, I can relate to the fact that I was 35 once, but I can't relate to what you're growing up. I'm not saying you, but in general, at 35. It's a totally different experience. But I relate to it as I did when I was 35. So the pressures and problems and good times, bad times are different than mine. So I don't see the change, Like, when I was 35, gas was 50 cents, literally. So you say, okay, now it's $5, but you don't see the change, you just, so when I was 35, it was easier to buy food and buy a house and buy everything. And so you just assume that now at 35, it's the same. It's not, it's completely different. The pressures are completely different. So I'm starting to understand this as I get older, but the pressures of the generations are different. And so I can't really say, well, you should do this and you should do that. No, it's like, I had two families. I had my first family, and it cost this much money to raise them. And then I started a second family, and I was, it cost not double or triple. It was like 10 times more. And I didn't realize it. And I'm saying, well, why is the wine business so bad? The wine business wasn't bad. It's just that the times have changed, and I needed more money. And to get more money means you have to raise prices, and then you start going down a slope like that. And I think that's what we're seeing too, is a lot of you're relating to in a different time. You can raise a family a whole lot less in the 80s than you can in 2025. And I think you can do the whole same thing with wine. You can do everything is, not a little bit more expensive, probably double or triple
Yeah.
what it costs. And that's what you miss. So you say, oh, yeah, I remember. No, but everything, if you take what you remembered and double it or triple it, then you know what today is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest problem with the wine business is that, it got out of control because of rising prices, but the person buying the wine is still the person buying the wine. And they can't afford to drink wine on a regular basis if it's over a certain price point, And but that also goes all the way back to how much the grapes cost. So they priced the grapes out of the market, and now they priced the wine out of the market.
Yeah.
And they're saying, oh, millennial, young, whatever the youth, they don't drink anymore. They still drink, but they just can't afford your wine.
I mean, wine it's more expensive than liquor or beer.
Right. Right.
I mean,
right.
Maybe for a different time and more for meals and what have you. But if you're just trying to get drunk, it's
not
much more expensive.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think we're in the midst of change. So this remark doesn't as apropos for today as it would be 2 years ago. How much could you afford on a daily basis for wine? $25, $20, $11. I mean, in 2 or 3 COVID times, it was a lot higher. Now, $20 is pushing it.
Yeah. I mean, COVID times, nobody was driving their cars. Nobody was going on vacations.
And the prices were still low, and relative speaking, after COVID. Mm-hmm. I think there's a huge surge of pricing, but you're right. I mean, you can afford because you weren't doing anything. So $20 times 30, that's $600 a month just on wine if you drank a bottle of, and I have to say, I don't do it anymore, but I used to drink a bottle of wine every day for 30, 40 years easily. I mean, I don't think it's the right thing to do now because I think that the old country, you could drink a bottle of wine a day, but you could go to sleep, take a nap or live a more leisurely life. And I think in the times we live in, if you drank a bottle of wine, it's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
And I think their truly made natural wine, quote unquote, has the ability to be open for weeks and still be drinkable, that it doesn't have to be consumed the day that it was opened, because that's the craftsmanship and what it takes to make natural wine. Because I've heard some people, the wine doesn't even last the whole bottle, that it starts to change before the bottle's empty.
Right, get mousy
and like funky. Whereas these wines, I mean, I'm not bragging because this is the way it's been. I mean, I've tasted people here at the table that the bottle was open for 2 weeks. Maybe it's down to here.
Yeah.
It kept cool. It's fine. Maybe better. I mean, I think that's the promise, that it is better.
I think you age your wines in barrels longer than most in the natural wine community.
My opinion is it's at least a year.
Okay.
And there may be exceptions to that because I don't know everything. I haven't seen everything. But in my case, a year to 2 years. So 24 is a different year, very difficult year. Say the 23s and the 22s, I'd be looking to bottle them in October, November of the year before. So, whereas the 24s, I'm getting glass this week, but I really don't know what the hell's going on with them. They're very, very difficult year. Very difficult year for the grapes. Very difficult year for the wine. I mean, the 24s had this cycle of hot to cold, hot to cold, hot to cold through the whole growing period. Even after the grapes are picked, we still see these highs and lows that were. And by the time we got the grapes in, they were really tired. So we had very sluggish fermentations, and they're going very slow in the barrel. And it'd be interesting for you I'd like to, see what your opinion is of them.
Yeah. Are you letting the wines, I guess, kind of age through like growing pains and those different phases? Is your bottling kind of in a similar style with your picking, where it's kind of like, okay, it's it feels ready.
Yeah.
Now we go.
Yeah. You know, I mean, always bottled the year before after the harvest. And this will be obviously after the harvest, but, you know, November or so, but, you know, they weren't ready. They weren't ready. And it's kind of an interesting thing. They're very, it's like a multifaceted. They're just showing you different cuts of where they're at.
Okay. Have you had previous years like that? Or I guess any years jump out as particularly difficult
when
for
ask me
you
that,
or easy for you?
A perfect example, 2005, 2007.
Okay.
So here I'm going to contradict myself what I said earlier about no 2 years being the same, but I'm going to say it. So they're very similar years,
Okay.
picking dates, da, 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 da. The 05s were beautiful in the barrel. I mean, just wonderful in the barrel. The 07s were just really doing well. Beautiful wines. The 05, when we bottled it, they just went to sleep. It went fast to sleep. The 07s continued the progress.
Okay.
And I couldn't sell the 05s. I mean, I'm finally, I mean, that's 05. So 05, 15, you know, they were 15 years old. So that would be 05, that'd be 20, right?
They're 20 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was able to finally sell some in 2020, 2021.
Oh, wow.
They finally,
Okay.
they
That long
kind
to
of,
come around.
they took a long time. I mean, of course, you're talking about the person that made them, not the drinker. So my expectations of what a wine should taste like is different than the actual person that bought the bottle and drank it. So if they never had it, you know, if they didn't know the history of 05, they'd say, oh, this is fine. Maybe it's not as fruity as I'd like, or maybe it's a little more acidic than I'd like.
Yeah.
But it was, whereas I'd say, you know, the 07s were just so much better, relatively speaking.
All the difficulties or the issues or just what was happening would obviously color your perception of it in some ways, you know. I always call it like knowing where the bones are buried.
Right. Well,
kind
yeah.
of, you know.
You're there when you bottle it and say, hey, you're high, man. This is good. And then it just goes,
Yeah.
and they're okay, but they're not what you wanted them to be,
Yeah.
or what you wanted them to show, what they showed in the barrel.
Yeah. I guess conversely, any vintages that you felt like
1997,
okay.
the best year of the century, the best year I've ever seen in my whole career.
What made it special for you?
You know, and there again, I always say, if I knew what it made it, I'd be in Las Vegas right now because there's just so many variables what makes a great vintage. But the one thing that stood out, everything was picked by the 1st of October.
Okay.
So I did 100 tons. I did 50 tons. I think I had about 50 tons worth of fermentation. Pressed that out, brought in the last half, and we were done. It was the first year in my experience that I actually had October. There was, you know, the whereas before you just work from essentially beginning of September to Halloween. I mean, it's just a blur, just blur. We don't take grapes in on Sundays, but we do have to do the maintenance of cap pushing and stuff. So it's crushing and pressing for 2 months. Then you're done. Whereas in that when it was all done, every varietal, I mean, every weather pattern of the year favors one varietal over another. Oh, this is a good year for Pinot. Oh, this is a good year for Zinfandel. Doesn't mean the Pinot was bad, but it wasn't touched by the weather near as well as another variety was. Whereas in 97, every varietal was exactly where you wanted it to be.
And that was probably somewhere around your kind of peak production?
No, I peaked in about 2012.
2012. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was steady at 100 tons for all those years.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, it was just, and it's universally known. I mean, any 97 is like the banner year. But an interesting kind of footnote to it all was also the year when watering down must became normal, regular. So one of the things that was happening that was gearing up during that period is that we were looking for ripeness. So ripeness only comes with ripeness. but it also means high sugar levels translated into high alcohol levels. And that was it's always been a no-no, but it started to become more so than, 15%, it's too hot, there's no character, 15%, it's washed out but which isn't necessarily true. I mean, it's a balance. But anyway, so what really was starting that year was you took a percentage of juice out and you put water in. So you let the grapes get quite ripe, approaching 30. And 30 is the cutoff point. No wine on a natural yeast or any yeast is going to go past 30 and make it dry. I mean, 31, you got sweet wine. 32, you got sweet wine. 29, you're on the edge. So they would bring them up to that high level and then water them back, ferment the wine. And then when you had the wine, you had those overtones of super ripeness, ultra ripeness, plush, beautiful caramelization. But then the alcohol level was knocked down. And in those days, it was something that the winemaker would do. Everybody went home, they would do it. It was a little dirty secret. But the irony of that is that now it's commonplace. You take out 10% and put in 10% water. You take the juice out that you took out of it. It might be a Cabernet from Napa. It might be anything. And you sell it off at $10 a gallon as a rosé.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's just every winery, not every winery, but an awful lot of wineries do that. I mean, even natural wineries do that. Does it break the code of natural wine? I don't know. Does it? I don't know. But it does hurt two things. One is if you're buying grapes, the grower is losing a percentage of his crop as that sugar level goes up and up just in dehydration.
Right.
And it could be pretty severe from 25 to 29, you could lose 30% of your weight. And the contracts always have, a item in there about the sugar level. And if it goes over 23, the price goes up. But given the times we're in, who's going to do that? Because they'll say, I don't want your grapes. So then the other thing is a guy's buying, there again, we get back to price, a $30 to $50 bottle of wine, and 10% of it came out of the tap.
Yeah.
And and I know for a fact, that happened this year. I mean, it happens every year. And of names, even I think Ridge puts water on. They always do ingredient labeling.
Yeah.
He'll put water on there.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's different if it has it on the label? If they're
Well,
telling
you're
you when
being honest.
when you buy the wine?
You're honest.
Yeah.
You're not trying to fool anybody. But a wine that had hydration in it, there's a flat spot in the middle. It's just a flat spot. I mean, you can't take out the sugar and the acid and all the goodies and then put water in and think it's going to be the same. I mean, logically, it doesn't make any sense. To me.
Yeah. No, I totally understand,
but I
agree. I think in '97 is about. I think a lot of people kind of peg that as a year that Napa, especially, maybe started to change in style.
Well, it's a good example of that is, everybody knows 97 is a great year. I mean, there's no question about it. So the 97 cabs get into the auction circuit. So you donate a bottle of your wine to a charity for the auction and you get a tax write-off. You buy the bottle and you get a tax write-off, and you put it right back into the circuit, and it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So very seldom do they get opened. But when they do, that was when you understood which ones were watered and which ones weren't. The ones that weren't watered were like beyond belief, and the ones that were watered fell to the wayside.
Yeah. You're probably most well known for Zin, but you've worked with a really wide range of grapes in your career. I mean, from Pinot to Petit Syrah, Alicante Boucher.
Yeah.
We've got, 40-year-old Valdegui here, Chardonnay. Do you want to say any words about some of these other wines? Other than the Zinfandel?
Sangiovese.
Sangiovese.
Sangiovese really responded well to our treatment. It's so funny because that was the 90s, the mid 90s when phylloxera really hit and vineyards were being pulled out. not being, and then replanted. So the first wave was Sangiovese, because we mistakenly thought that Sangiovese would grow in the same climate that Cabernet grew, which would be really hot and dry. And while Sangiovese is one of the first grapes to bud out and one of the last grapes to be picked, it needs a very long growing season, but it doesn't like heat. And so a lot of the places that were replanted that had Cab, they put in Sangiovese, and then at a certain point in October, the Sangiovese just defoliated. It couldn't go any farther, and then the neighboring Cab was still going strong.
Yeah.
So that was one thing against it, and it was so unusual is that you have to thin Sangiovese about a third of what it sets. It sets way more fruit than it could ever ripen.
Okay.
And that was indicative of those Chiantis that were grown on the floors of the valleys, and they would have just huge crops, and the wine was very light in color, and they put them in those wicker
fiascos.
Yeah. So they're just really almost chillable reds and drink young, which we couldn't even begin to sell in California. But, so very acidic, no fruit, etc.
Yeah.
So, and to tell a farmer that he needs to cut a third of his crop off, and he's just coming out of the 90s where he had oh my God. So a lot of bad Sangioveses were made because of overcropping. And then the final death knell was the fact that you could buy really good Sangioveses from Italy for half the price of what California had to charge. That it just destroyed the whole. They disappeared. I mean, you're hard pressed to find a grower that's still growing Sangiovese. A winery can afford to grow it, but a grower,
independent grower,
trying to put it on the market. So then the next one was Syrah, and Syrah really hit the gong. I mean, that was, perfect for our climate. It was very similar to Zinfandel in its growing habits. It could grow in a cold climate. It can grow in a hot climate. As hot as you can get it, it'll come through. Beautiful grape to work with. It's funny, the very first, so we're talking mid to late 90s. $40 was like the price for a Syrah, because there was none.
Yeah.
And then within 10 years, I remember distinctly when Ben was still the wine buyer. He's passed on now at Bottle Barn. He wouldn't buy any more Syrah. He said, I can't buy it. And then the next thing was, because there was so much of it, everybody was making a rosé out of Syrah. He said the same thing. Couldn't buy it because there's just too many of them.
Yeah, consumers have always seemed to have some issue with buying Syrah, maybe.
Well, because it's the same problem with Zinfandel. When you look at a rack, unless you have somebody there to help you, you don't know if it's from a cold climate or a hot climate. Are you going to get that real, gun sight, Syrah that's just like that, or are you going to get a big, luxurious one?
Yeah,
you can't tell by the bottle. You even can't tell by the appellations sometimes, because appellations are so different. But another thing that I found with Syrah is that it has a bitterness in it. Like Cabernet has a tannin. Say for the first 5 years, it's very tannic, and then after 5 years, the fruit starts to emerge. Syrah has a bitterness that is inherent to the wine. After 5 years, it starts, and I think that's where the Grenache Mourvedre Syrah,
GSM kind of blends.
They started to temper the bitterness of a young Syrah by putting in little Grenache and little Mourvedre. And it's the same thing even in France. The Prestige, they have Prestige Syrahs that are 100% Syrahs, but they're very rare. It's usually blended because it makes them more accessible when they're young. So I mean, I like working with Syrah. The new grapes like the Grenache and Mourvedre. Grenache, well, I make it every year because my brother grows it. He grows a very good one.
Yeah.
Is not my favorite grape to work with. They always say how hard Pinot is to make, because Pinot's a grape like, if there's 7 things that make a red wine red, Syrah has 3 of them. So you're dealing with a red wine that's a white wine. So you've got all kinds of issues in terms of how long can you leave it in the barrel? Are you starting to oxidize it? Does it need more time? Does it need less time? How high should the sugar levels be? How high is the acid? Boom, boom, boom. Grenache is even more so. Grenache, a young Grenache is just a beast. I mean, it's so high in acid, and you're always like ruminating over it. Is when you let that go into the barrel, is it gonna lose the acidity, but turn oxidized? You know, and there again another grape that's good for blending. But now we're really in a period where Syrah, 100% Syrahs are really what people are thinking they want, but it's a hard grape to drink on its own. I remember I got this old vine Grenache from the Testa family up in Capella. It was the oldest vineyard still on the ranch. I forget how old it was. And it was a Grenache. So, I mean, it had big bunches, you know, and light color. So you thought, oh, okay. And I was making, that time I had an active wine club. So I used to have to make blends for the wine club. You know, like I think I had 250 people in the wine club at that point. So I had to make barrels of wine specifically for the wine club because I didn't make that many varietals. You know, anyway, long story short, one year I blended some of this old vine Grenache in there, and it just took over the blend. I mean, it's just like Grenache acid. So I bottled it and sent it out. Wine clubs are another story. And the barrel that I kept back from the blend, I let at least another year in the barrel before I bottled it. It was that
long.
That long. So it's a tough one. Grenache is a tough one. It's a difficult grape to understand. I think in the wine, you know, it's very very specific in what it gives you. You know, it could be a very unattractive wine if you're not careful. And then, you know, I never really made any oddball grapes. So the one time I made Chenin Blanc, which when I was growing, Chenin Blanc, oh God, how bad, how bad. But I got this botrytis-sized, it came in purple. I mean, it was like, oh my God, this is going to be a sweet wine. Yeah. And the sucker went dry. It was like 15%.
Oh, really?
It was just awful. You know, and I've worked with a little bit of a Viognier and Marsanne and Roussanne, you know, and I liked them at the beginning, you know, but I think that we can't get the crispness that they can get in Europe and a lot of those that they tend to get a little, I wouldn't even call them flabby. They're just a ripeness that you don't see in the south of France or where they grow those, Sauvignon Blanc being one of them. But you know, it's so funny as my own taste, because I used to make a barrel-aged, very, you know, a Chardonnay that came in 24.5%, 25% bricks, which is normal in those days, abnormal now. Never left it on its skins. I mean, Chardonnay is one grape, in my mind, you never let on its skins. It just has, the skins have a terrible taste. But putting it in a nice French oak barrel, it got a certain amount of fatness and crispness at the same time. But to me, you know, as especially as my taste, sometimes, you know, even though they've been put down so badly, they used to even say anything but Chardonnay. Remember, anything but Chardonnay? Yeah. I have a craving for a nice Chardonnay sometimes. You know, not a steel Chardonnay and not a completely malolactic Chardonnay, but something that kind of walks the line. My friend from Texas, Lewis, came out and he had some appointments at some wineries down in the south of San Francisco, and Mount Eden was one of them. So the Mount Eden, they planted the grapes in 1944, and they started the winery in 52. They had a 2,000 estate Chardonnay reserve, and I tell you, I can still taste that wine. It was just, I don't have that experience with Viognier and Marsanne, but I tell you, this was just like California Chardonnay, but it wasn't as fat as they did earlier, but it had a beautiful fatness and richness about it and a great acidity. I mean, it's one of those wines that and it was like $120 a bottle.
Yeah, don't give it away.
But this was worth it, and I could get a 30% discount. I still couldn't pull the trigger on it, But what a beautiful, if you ever have a chance to try one, beautiful, beautiful Chardonnay.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges you've had, or I guess not challenges, what's it like making a unsulfured white wine? Kind of what are the things you deal with?
I think you've got to, well, first of all, you've got to be really careful because your oxidation, you don't have the stuff in the skins to do it. And then you start getting into skin contact whites, and then it opens up a whole nother level of oxidation and color and bitterness sometimes. Mm-hmm. I did have a Gewürztraminer that I had 2 punch-ons that I opened up the heads on and fermented the Gewürz in them, seeing if I could get some of that pink color. And you can't get it, but it was still all right. But the thing, my experience is, especially with the Chardonnay, is crush it, press it out, and get it into a nice clean barrel. I was working with Sauvignon Blanc that I got up from Anderson Valley for a couple of years. And it was a Sauvignon Blanc that was it was in a vineyard, the vineyard as a whole, and it had all the Bordeaux grapes and Sauvignon Blanc, I think Semillon, were all good, except this one block of Sauvignon Blanc was a problem. The first year I got it, it went sideways on me, got a little bacterial infection. The second year, which I took a bigger piece of, I went in February and tasted the wine, and it was galloping sideways. I mean, It wasn't going slow. I go, holy shit, what am I going to do with this thing? Do I filter it? What do I do? I mean, so I always like to just go to bed and let my subconscious work on it. And I realized that when I woke up, I needed to blend it with a grape that had high acid, low pH. Mm-hmm. And I had a Carignan from the same year that I blended it. And the second the Sauvignon Blanc touched the Carignan, it was cured. I mean, it was just like, boom, done. I made a beautiful wine that we sold. It was always kind of, not that I invented it, but I thought it was funny. It was what we would call a redneck rosé, blending red and white together. But it turned into be a good wine. And it also kind of brings up the point of, even though you're not adding sulfite for whatever reason you add sulfite, you can still work within a certain realm of if you do have a problem with the wine. And in this case, it wasn't the vinification of it. It came from the vineyard. Mm-hmm. The grapes looked healthy. Their numbers were good, but it just had something going on with it that you can save something or work with things that in some cases you'd want to run through the lab. Whereas if you have in those days I was making a lot more wine, I had a repertoire of what I could get that high acid red wine in there and cure it.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of use other techniques without resorting to adding things to the wine. Yeah, I didn't mention it earlier, but I mean, Carignan's one that I sort of associate with your wines as of late. Mm-hmm. Also, Testa family?
Yeah, so the first Carignan I made was 2001. Kind of an interesting story. Carignan was obviously planted extensively in Sonoma, Napa, and Mendocino in the early days. Mm-hmm. In Sonoma, Napa, obviously, you're hard-pressed to find a Carignan now, right? Because it was always considered a secondary grape, not an A but a B. But in the history of Carignan, before the hybridization of Cabernet, Carignan was considered the wine of royalty. I mean, it was held in high esteem. Carignan treated properly, makes a wonderful wine. Mm. But then when Cabernet, I think Cabernet is a blend or a hybrid of Cab Franc and Cab Franc.
Cab and Sauvignon Blanc.
Sauvignon Blanc,
yeah.
So anyway, in Mendocino, they didn't pull out their Carignan, and they grew it all the way into the 2000s. And the main buyer was Gallo. Mm.
Okay.
He'd buy thousands of tons of Carignan. Everybody that grew Carignan up there sold it to Gallo.
Okay.
And then after the harvest of 99, he called all the growers into the auditorium at the high school in Ukiah and told them that they're not buying their Carignan anymore.
Okay.
And that was the end.
Is it going into probably like Hardy Burgundy?
Oh
or
yeah, they
something
were
like
using,
that?
but then they did their extensive planning in the Central Valley where they
Right.
could get higher yields and not pay premium price, and not premium prices. I mean, Carignan in those days were probably $500 or $600 a ton.
But
You know, it was still high land, and it wasn't I mean, it wasn't
Yeah.
overcropped.
Right.
So they were getting 3 tons, 4 tons, 3 tons of good grape.
Yeah.
It was good grape, and I think Gallo knew it. But then when it was just much more advantageous for them to have their own grapes, so that was the end of it. So I started working with the Testas in the 2000 vintage, and they had a need to sell it, right? So I just fell in love with it that first harvest. I mean, it was just great. I mean, it was just a head prune vine. It was great blending grape for, not because it's a blending grape, but because it just has such great facility to improve something you're working with, or you have direction with it. I mean, later years I made a wine I called Albarello,
Yeah.
which was it's Italian for low pruned vines. But so I had that Carignan, the Petit Syrah, and a Zinfandel, all from Testa, all head pruned vines, all dry farmed. So it was a beautiful wine, but it was a wine that I could sell easily in the wholesale market to wine shops and restaurants because it had a firm backbone of acidity from the Carignan. But anyway, so I was one of the first people to put a vineyard designation and a varietal on the label for Carignan. But then it got so bad in Mendocino, it still is, that you could go up there and buy Carignan from a vineyard that wasn't pruned, and there would be a cheaper price or half pruned. I mean, just to move it, just to get it out. And so, but within 10 years, so by 2010, and the natural wine movement was well on its way at that point. I mean, anyway, Carignan is darling of natural winemakers. It's such an easy grape to work with, and results in such a. It's not a fruity wine. It's an earthy wine. It's not a fruity wine. It's a terroir-driven wine, and it's exactly what those winemakers thought they needed with that kind of a grape. And it really is a wonderful grape to work with. And so it's so funny. So within 10 years, the price of Carignan went from the bottom to the top, and it was in demand. And now you can get all you want again. It's just too bad the growers in Mendocino are definitely taking a hit more than even in Sonoma, because they don't get they're not considered, which I don't believe is true. High quality grapes. It's just different. The wine is very good. It's one of the reasons why I was really drawn to Mendocino, is the climate is so different than Sonoma Valley that I could make a Zinfandel from Mendocino and a Zinfandel from Sonoma Valley, and they're different. It isn't like the same thing at a different price. They're very different. They don't have the influence of the ocean, first of all, or the bay, and it's a shorter season. It's colder up until the spring, and it's a lot hotter during the growing season. But it could close down, as it did this year, late September, early October. It doesn't have the ability to go into late October for ripeness. And they got hit really. I mean, so I'm gearing up a little bit of inventory, and the rains came early, and I lost one of the grapes, well underlooked but beautiful from Mendocino is Barbera.
Oh yeah.
God, it's a wonderful wine, and a grape, and it rotted before I had a chance to get to it, or before it could be picked.
You've worked with it.
Oh yeah.
Before. Okay.
Barbera is I think the first vintage I made of Barbera was in 07, and it's like Petit Syrah, not in any flavor profiles or anything, but Petit Syrah, if you pick it too soon, chalky acidity, years in the making. You pick it too late, gets real flabby.
Yeah.
Whereas Zinfandel can always, because you got that greenness because of the uneven even ripening. It's easy to pick too soon, but it's hard to pick too late unless it gets. And then the same thing with Barbera. Barbera really walks a line that you have to pick on. But boy, it's a beautiful Northern California grape. I mean, it's nothing like Piedmont's with that big, acid that you got to have 10 years before you drink it. But it has a texture that you don't see in any other fruit.
California Barbera is another one that's never really caught on in a big way.
I think a couple things. One is that you really got to pick it at the right time. And I think the other thing is that, and we could go deep, but it doesn't really matter. I think there's some grapes that really respond better to a more natural approach to winemaking. Like Barbera doesn't like to be beat up. I mean, you can't pump it around a lot. You can't put a lot of stuff in it. It wants to be kind of left alone. And whereas like a Cabernet, you could do anything you want to it. Whereas Barbera, you gotta treat it right. And Petite Sirah to some degree, because it's always known as a grape of big color, intense aging potential, but it's got to be treated correctly. Where some grapes are just so much easier. Syrah is a lot easier. Pinot's a bitch. Pinot's hard to make, hard to grow. And, you could have the best Pinot in the world sitting in front of you, and you can have 10 people there drinking it, and half of them hate it, and half of them are in love for the rest of their lives, you know? It's a very intimate wine. I mean, you would never take a Pinot and have it at a party unless it was like there's a kind of an ordinary Pinot, but a good Pinot is a wine that you really would share with just one person, usually, special dinner or food. I love Pinot. I haven't made some for quite a while.
Did you feel like they held up and worked pretty well with your winemaking process?
What we were doing. Yeah, it really responded well to it. Because there again, we didn't put a lot of air on it. Just 1 ton fermenters into a barrel, racked once, and then bottled.
Yeah.
It was a really, really good grape. But that Sideways movie really made it hard to get Pinot again because the prices went up on it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, to me, it's a lot like Grenache. Well, actually, they're saying Grenache is the new Pinot because of the lightness of the color. But Pinot is having a hard time with the climate change.
Yeah.
So it's moving further and further west. Like, we could grow Pinot here, and I'm sure we can, but there's none.
Yeah.
But I used to, right up the street here, I had a vineyard, the Jewel Vineyard Pinot that was planted. It was 50-year-old vines, but it was minuscule. If we got a half a ton, 3/4 a ton per acre was a lot.
Yeah.
Hell to pick it. But anyway, there's more and more interest in, I guess, West County. There's a couple wineries there. One particularly that I just learned about is Cobb. Have you heard about them?
Yeah.
You should talk to their winemaker. Very meticulous. They have a place that you could see the ocean out on the coast, and they have 27 different clones of Pinot. There's one vineyard that they experimented with rootstock and clones.
Okay.
And they have a tasting room. I think they just moved one up until Healdsburg. But the very meticulous winemaker, and then I guess there again, I took that journey down south. There's Martzen down in Santa Cruz, a young fella making Santa Cruz Pinot Noirs.
Yeah, Cole.
Yeah, good.
They're great.
I couldn't,
viticulture too is top notch there.
Yeah, he's got a friend that's the grower of Pinot in those hills. We went down there to try it. He wasn't there, but we had a good taste. He's doing some really good work. Very good work. I think it's so interesting because even though it's not 100 miles away. I wouldn't think the peninsula is, but not maybe 80 miles away at most.
You can get there in under 2 hours.
Right. So Ridge, we did Eden. Where else did we go down there? But those were the highlight. I mean, Ridge is just, I think every young winemaker should drink Ridge wine to understand what winemaking is really. But anyway, and their winemakers are really into every. They don't have any blankets of way of doing things. Everyone's unique and different. They had had some good wine. But then, it's interesting. The good vintages down there are just the opposite of the good vintages here, and it's so close. So when they mentioned like 16, they had a very good 16, and 16 was not a good vintage for us.
Okay.
So I mean, it's so close. It's interesting.
Yeah, down there, I mean, they have so many, small vineyards kind of socked into the fog, and then there's, the higher elevation stuff as you get towards Santa Clara. We're kind of
Right.
above that, and I feel like
And they're
you can
really
get-
a lot more urban than we are here, I think, in the
Yeah.
vineyards too.
Yeah.
But then the good part of that is they have a much bigger audience to sell wine to, because they are so distinctly different. The Santa Cruz scene, they're doing really well down there.
Yeah.
They have where Cole is. Have you been to the winery?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Madsen facility there. Yeah.
So they have co-ops, but they're blocked off, so they really have control over their environments, which is something I wanted to show you when we walk through the cellar, is that, we've been here, for all those years, and we've got stuff growing in the building. It's an incubator, especially for like malolactic and a lot of the things in a positive way for the wines,
You talked about it for a minute earlier, but you've had younger like winemakers come through here and work, like we're saying, like Caleb and others. And I also, I see you at wine fairs, at, Brumaire, by the way. But are there any kind of younger winemakers that you've been enjoying their wines,
I like these guys,
or people that you think are doing some good things?
I think the guy up in the foothills called, his name's Carlos.
Arquilles. Yeah.
He's true to the form, man. That guy, I'll put that for a second. I like these two, this young couple that I think they work at Ordinary, one of them called Under the Table. Mm-hmm. They had a Chardonnay that was pretty damn good.
I feel like their wines follow in your style
Right.
of
Trying to,
wine.
yeah.
Like they're in the same boat, kind
Right.
of,
Well, and Carlos is
fully
Carlos.
ripe and
Carlos is the same way. He's a good man. He's a really good man. Mm-hmm. Nice guy.
What's the future of Coturri Winery?
I don't know. I don't know. We're talking about it now, and Susan's coming home, and her daughter, or my stepdaughter, she's taken interest in the wine. But I'm just, if it was 5 years ago, or even, I'd have a chance. But I'm just don't have the energy to do it. To try to gear back up again.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess the future of Coturri is really interwoven into the future of grapes and wine in Sonoma. I mean, where's in 5 years? What is this place going to look like? Not here, but in general.
Yeah, wider area.
I mean, they're pulling out tons of grapes. The wineries are going out of business. I mean, good names have closed their doors. And who's going to be left? And the ones that are left, are they going to? Who's the audience for them? What is the future? I mean, that you've got more of a finger on the pulse because you talk to a lot of winemakers. What's the general consensus that where anything's going to be in 5 years? You must ask everybody that question. Huh?
Yeah, and I'm starting to ask it more. And 2 wineries that I found out they're closing yesterday.
Wow.
So
would you mind sharing the names?
One, I don't know if it's public, but I saw Hank La Clarine. They're winding down.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And, all the wines are for sale on the website, like 20% off, and it's.
Are they going to close down?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His last vintage, 24.
I'm not sure if there were wine. Well.
They may not even done 24.
I don't know if he made 24 or not.
Wow.
But so other people have, skipped vintages here and there. And do they gear up again? Because, maybe with other people skipping vintages, you have a chance to get back into some of those grape sources.
You can't.
But, only because like nobody else is maybe asking for the.
Well, I think the foothills have taken a real beating with the weather the last few years.
Yeah.
And it's just as the market shrinks, it's shrinking away from the foothills.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes you just fade away. I'm just like I kind of related that story about 22 about, hey, it's all right, boss. Sometimes it ends. I mean, everything that begins ends.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it gets picked up by another generation, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
And that's part of the beauty of it, I think. In each successive generation, there should be change and a different point of view, different style within a bigger style.
Yeah.
It is succession because it's such a lousy business, that it's inevitable.
Yeah. I didn't ask you about it. I talked to Derek about it a little bit, just selling cider. That seems like a tough road.
Cider's
go.
gone. It's absolutely gone, disappeared.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, God, I started making ciders in '08 and still ciders, and I liked them, but then with a little bit of age on them, they started to get into Brettanomyces. It seems to me that, and I talked to other producers, and they agree with me, but I don't know for sure science-wise, but apples have a distinct Brettanomyces that doesn't seem to spill over into grapes, either because maybe grapes are higher in acid or higher in alcohol. I don't know.
Okay.
So I started seeing that. So you're kind of getting that Basque cider quality, the real sour.
Yeah.
And I said,
Band-Aidy
and some people like that, but as a winemaker, primarily not a cider maker, that's like, whoa, that's not for me. Mm-hmm. And then I happened upon using the pet nat style, and the rogue yeast can't get started in it because of the CO2. So I've got 5-year cider that I'm still selling because it's perfect, absolutely perfect. But yeah, I started making that pet nat. The first couple of years were good, and then 1 year, because pet nat, you as you know, I'll just make the point, you bottle it before the fermentation's completely over, but not so that there's any residual sugar. So I typically bottle at between 1.5 and 1.75 residual bricks, and that gives it enough effervescent, but the cider goes dry. And then it was just like the plug got pulled on it, man. I mean, I just can't. Okay. I mean, I when I open it up, when I do wine tastings, people really appreciate it and buy a bottle or two, but there's no wholesale market for it at all. A little bit in Chicago. I was working with a distributor up there, Census, and he always would take 20 cases of it and do. Chicago is a cider town. They have a bar up there called Lumberman's.
Okay.
That I think has allegedly 27 ciders on tap and 150 different bottles. Wow. So they have an active cider clientele, but I don't see it in California.
Yeah.
Americans still have a problem with cider because they always think about it as that ultra sweet, kind of gummy, cloying thing. And none of my ciders were ever that way.
Right. Yeah, it's such a shame. I mean, the area here, just history with apples, or I mean, and down in like Santa Cruz also, I mean,
are you hearing that in general, that ciders are down?
Yeah, I think they're way down from what I've heard, but I hope some people can continue to make really good examples.
Well, the other thing
and using good fruit.
Well, there's a guy. There was a guy at the tasting that we went to. Was it that he was doing ciders? He did a really good job too. Forget his name. Yeah, he's making it as a cider, because the other thing that happened is Apple a Day went out of business, which would press small amounts. Okay. And then Monsanto went out of business in Santa Rosa. They moved to Washington. So unless you buy your own equipment, there's no place to get them pressed out. Okay. So that I was going to make some this year, and there's none. There's nobody to do it.
No support for it.
Yeah.
Wow. Is there anything we kind of have missed or glanced over, or anything that you have?
I'm sure we have.
I mean, we always do, but
well, I think
is there anything
I think we kind of glossed over the point of what is going to look like in 5 years. I mean, sure, it's easy to be doom and gloom in 5 years. Obviously, somebody's going to be making wine and doing it halfway decent in 5 years. Yeah, because the people still drink wine, and so I see. Here's what I see. I from my experience. So I came back here from Tucson around the beginning of February. I was there for Christmas and took to January and then came back. And I've always had like 1 or 2 tastings a week. So that would keep me in food and gas. So in February, 1 or 2 a month, 3 a month.
Okay.
Really bad.
Okay.
But the weather was terrible. So I said, okay. So it didn't get any better until maybe the end of July, beginning of August. I started seeing all of a sudden a lot of old customers. I mean, like we're talking 20-year-old customers. Oh, Tony, I want a case of wine. I always remembered that. Simple. All right, Tony. And then I started getting more and more serious people here. You know, not that people that are interested in natural wines aren't serious, but they're interested in a more natural approach to winemaking and a more authentic, traditional style of wine, which I consider myself a winemaker of. So the more of the, like I said, the barrel aging for at least a year, you know, full ripeness, full extraction, full color, concentration, you know, a lot of acidity to go with food, a nice complete flavor profile without any defects, you know, has sort of come back in style, and it's being looked at by people that have kind of gone through the natural wine, which I dare say craze, and come out the other side saying there must be other things out there. What else is out there? And I remember a couple from Berkeley. I mean, they're Berkeley. I mean, they're really radical in their thoughts about, you know, cooperatives and how we should be working together. I mean, they're the real thing.
Yeah. The
real thing. And they just love the wine and they buy it, you know, and they just say, this is what we want. And which is kind of unusual because they would think that they would be, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be even saying that because they're good people. But so I see natural wine becoming more of with a lack of a better thing to say, glug wines that are easy to drink, wines that are maybe a little effervescent, maybe a little cloudy, a little leesy, some unusual flavors, bordering on VA, hopefully not VA, but, you know, sometimes getting into that realm, and, you know, and finding a price point that people are willing to be adventuresome with and support that style of winemaking. And I think that traditional styles of wine, old country styles of wine, that have never really gone out of phase, out of liking, but I think it comes and goes. And I think now that whole level is gonna be a little bit stronger. I think we're gonna see. Well, yeah, I mean, a winery like Matthiasson, you know, he could be a natural wine. And he is a natural wine, but he's not in the natural wine movement, if there is such a thing. Mixed grade wine, and he has those 2 levels of wine: the expensive one, and then the one in the 20s that are very, very approachable and very well made.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of what he's doing, you know, and he's doing it. You know, he's got that one Chardonnay vineyard that I guess is a good producer, and he has a mid-20s or lower 20s Chardonnay that's as good as anything.
Yeah, the Linda Vista Chardonnay he makes it really good. Yeah,
it's a nice wine.
Yeah,
real nice wine, and it's approachable in both in flavor and in cost.
Yeah.
So I think it's gonna settle back into what it used to be, and you know, there's gonna be people that are experimenting, and there's gonna be people that kind of hold the line. I think Matthiasson is a traditional winemaker, personally. You know, and there's a couple other ones. Like there's one in Mendocino that's doing a good job. He has sort of like a cannabis name to his wines. What does he call it? It's reminiscent. The name kind of brings up the thought. It comes from Mendocino, so he plays on that a little bit. I don't remember, but anyway, I think that there's people that are doing well. I think in that. I think we're going to start seeing less custom crush facilities and more. Okay. You know, I think you can only go so far. You got to control your environment, and I think a lot of problems coming out of those kinds of incubators are some problems that need to be really addressed. And I think people, hopefully, with wineries going out of business, they can get in business or do like they did in Santa Cruz, where you have a real partition between what you're doing and the guy next door is doing, and you can share equipment, just make sure it's sanitized. I think that's really even a more European kind of point of view than what we're seeing. But wine's not disappearing. I know that for a fact. But I think it's going to be. It's happening in Europe too. I mean, there's a lot of bad. Well, I'm not going to call it bad wine, but a lot of substandard. And if you're a traditional wine drinker, you don't drink that wine. I mean, you try. I mean, I've tried. I mean, I just can't drink them. It's just a fact of the matter. But that's fine. That's there's plenty of people that do, right?
I have been hearing from people that things have been seeming a little better
Upswing,
lately, Not a gigantic change, but maybe looking up instead of looking down, or flat.
Well, I think the price, I think the smart people have lowered their prices and getting back in the market. I mean, I just slashed my FOB price on my red. I mean, just ridiculous. And I sold 112 cases to New York. So it's going to get in the marketplace for about between $20 and $22 with my label on it.
Wow, yeah.
It's going to, and they're interested. And so and I go, oh my God, Tony, you're going to die on this. How can you do it? But then, FOB pricing for Zinfandel in 1985 was $55 a case. Good Zinfandel, hillside good Zinfandel. And now it's $50 a bottle. It went too far. And then if you put a bottle out there, like we were kind of saying from the very beginning, $20, $22, that's about what a lot of people are making per hour.
Yeah.
That's a sacrifice. Where, it used to be $13, $14, $15 and people were making $15 or $18. I hope that I wouldn't have to stay in that price range to stay in the market. That I hope it's a stepping stone to get people back to appreciating it again and subtly raise the price.
Yeah, just kind of allow you to carry on.
Yeah, get some stuff out of the barn,
Yeah.
I wanted to have Susan talk to you too, because she has a different perspective, especially she's been here for about 15 years, so she's seen a lot more changes. If you don't mind, if you
not at all.
Bring her into the conversation.
Yeah, great.
I'll be right back.
Sure.
So Susan's been here about 15 years.
Yeah, 2010.
Yeah, 15 years.
Yeah.
So she obviously didn't grow up in the wine business like I did. So she has a very different perspective about it.
And it's interesting to see how it's just exploded and grown, and now it's kind of seems like it's self-correcting, the market.
Yeah, what are some of the changes you've seen just being around it? And
Well, I would say Tony was so exclusively the only one making wine the way he was when I first came out, when I first got here on this. I mean, I've been drinking his wine since 2000, 2001.
Okay.
So I was first introduced to it on the East Coast. And then always thought, I have to come out and visit. And so visited and met him in 2010 and was just amazed at how something could taste so good and be so pure and natural, but then also how it could be so amazingly criticized and chastised and even marginalized to an extent with oh, you can't do that. That's horrible. It's if it's natural, it's inherently flawed. And so it's all the, all these things that more than one thing cannot be true at once. So if it's good and it's natural, it must be flawed. Whereas you can still make good natural wine that's not high in VA and that is a classical old world style that is extremely applicable to many types of palates and foods. So it was interesting to first get engrossed in that. And then also my background is in Waldorf education.
Okay.
And I also worked with CSAs on the East Coast and biodynamic farming.
Okay.
So coming and then meeting all the biodynamic, BDANC, the Biodynamic Association of Northern California, and meeting the biodynamic Demeter wine growers here, and just seeing how it was totally a marketing ploy, the whole biodynamics, and how basically the winemakers write the rules for what is acceptable to be Demeter certified.
Okay.
And how you could have so many sulfites in it, and then you can sterile filter. It was just these constant bending of rules to have this And so he would, I think, intentionally sabotage me to send me to these biodynamic winemaking meetings.
You think
to
that, so you're saying like you feel like the wine gets like disconnected from the farming, the processes
Yeah, I think it
allowed
was
in the
what I
winemaking,
met.
disconnected
Just
from
what I
the
saw.
farming?
Because we would all bring, like, part of those meetings, everyone would bring their wine
Okay.
from it. And it was like, Coturri is radical. Like, how could you do this? Like, just from biodynamics. And even though they're doing Prep 500, 501, and doing all the compost preps, but yeah, this is radical. It was just like, okay. So it was definitely like a head tilt to me moment. And then seeing how he was the only one doing it. And then like really like around 2011, 12, I mean like certainly 14, it started to kind of come in. More winemakers were now changing the term of what is natural. So that was expanding what is natural. And before it was low intervention. So how I think everyone is trying to, and understandably so, in our capitalistic market, trying to make some type of name for themselves or some type of way that they are getting their message out to the broader public, to how they are a little bit unique and different, to get their message out there and attract customers. And then seeing that whole 2016, 17 of now we have the millennial winemakers, and then COVID bringing more of the millennial winemakers, that everyone is at a custom crush making wine and everyone's a natural winemaker. And then now it seems like we're in a oversaturated market that is now self-correcting.
This is the 77 Gamay.
Nice. Yeah. So seeing that, and I don't know, like I see Tony, he's been in it long. He's seen ups and downs in the market, and a lot of the winemakers, especially like I think the COVID winemakers, they're freaking out about how the wine sales are just plummeting, but you're just kind of like riding this wave of, well, this is the economy right now, and you do what you can.
You know, some folks, it's like the first downturn that they've been through, and
Right.
then others, I've talked to some other folks where they kind of experience like the 2007, 2008, all of that also, which kind of like splintered some of the large wineries and threw out a new crop, I think, of winemakers. But some people were making wines before that, and so kind of went through that, and it seems like each one feels a little different for people though, and maybe it's something different causing it, whether it's like neo-prohibitionist kind of streaks or economy or just a oversupply,
surplus. I was
or
gonna
like,
say that.
I mean, yeah, each one seems kind of unique. I guess Tony probably have a better understanding of what lessons can be taken from each one.
Well, yeah,
But-
in 79 when we started, the interest rates were 25%.
Okay.
And then the next really big one was the 9/11. There was a huge downturn. And then the '08 was, it was pretty bad too, but not as bad as this. But there wasn't as many wineries either. So it came out quicker because there wasn't as much competition.
Okay. So you think it just corrected
Yeah, well, yeah.
itself easier in the wine industry?
In 2000, in 79, there was only 13 wineries in Sonoma Valley, like I said earlier. So it was easy. I mean, you can do anything.
Yeah.
But then now there's buildings down on 8th Street that have 27 wineries in one building, I bet, yeah, anyway. There's 30 wine tasting rooms on the square, and then one's off the square. It's going to, like we were saying, it's going to have to be like, with that, Forrest Gump, the typhoon knocks out the fishing fleet, half the fishing fleet, and the other half does great after that.
The bubblegum shrimp.
Yeah. What was the bond? What's the bond number for
4903.
4903. Okay. Yeah. Do you know what they're at now?
You hear different numbers at 8,000 in the whole country,
Okay.
6,000 in the whole country. I don't know.
Okay.
But it seems like there must be 400 in Sonoma Valley alone. Maybe that's too much. Or Sonoma County must have 400.
I mean, there must have been a lot that have opened and closed even since that
Well, I
time
didn't even think
too.
of that, yeah.
So who knows what it's at?
Well, tell them where you got the
Guessing,
wine.
but-
That'd be interesting
Yeah.
because
Oh, where I first was introduced to your wine?
Right.
unassuming place.
Well, he had he had New York distributor back then, and then I lived in upstate New York and upstate Buffalo, New York. So that's
Okay.
where I was first introduced to his wine. And it was your 98 Chauvet Zin, maybe the Eastern Bloc. I can't remember. It was one of those. And it was just completely head turning, nothing like I ever tasted, and thought it was absolutely amazing. And then kept going back for more and more. So it was definitely one for the books. And then looked him up on his website, and then eventually was always plotting a move to come out and visit. So it was good. In 2010, I eventually made it after long thing of raising children and going through a divorce. Made my way out to California, but it's been a wild trip. Seeing what's gone on with it.
Yeah, the wines have traveled far.
Yeah, Taiwan,
South Korea,
South Korea,
Norway.
Norway,
Where else?
Germany.
Okay. Mexico too, obviously, but
yeah.
that's okay. Where else?
The problem is, though, to have a real market, you got to go with the wine. You know,
I think you burnt yourself out on so much travel in the 2000s,
Yeah.
the late 90s and 2000s, that he traveled this whole country.
yeah, 10 years, 12 years.
Yeah. I would say you're really more, where some people like really love to travel to do the European thing, you're more like America. If I could really say, like you've been to so many pockets of some different communities in the early aughts and late 90s that you did that so intensely that you obviously to the risk of many illnesses after traveling, but
Yeah. In my heart of hearts, it was like, you know, people in France, like in Bordeaux, they don't drink California wine. They drink Bordeaux wine. And I think getting that message of locality, even on a large scale, but even on a small scale, is really important because Americans aren't local. They don't work on that. Where you
But I
were-
think in the early 2000s, I don't know if like it resonates with you or your memory, but it was like still part of that burgeoning slow food movement, that farm to table, and just everything like really trying to know your farmer and support it. And like, where are you drinking your? Like, obviously, the food was the one as a next extension of what you were, cooking that night and accompanying your food. So you were doing a lot of that, like farm to table restaurants, and doing a lot of wine dinners around that concept.
Yeah, I remember. Well, when we did the discussion with Noel, where you'd kind of mentioned natural wines should be looked at more like food, treat it like it's chicken, local vegetables, organic vegetables. Go pick up the local natural wine, and
I mean, ultimately, that is important because that's the market. Is really, there was maybe you saw him at Bomera, Los Mujeres. They're a cider producer in Wisconsin.
yes, yeah, yeah.
And they're not going to distribute any farther than they can drive it, and that's it. They have no aspirations at all. Chicago is the biggest place they're going to go to.
Okay.
And so they're really building that same idea. Mm-hmm. But then again, it would be impossible here because there's so many people.
Yeah. Well, and you made your predictions that you thought things would be better in 6 months or with the wine market.
What do you think? It'd be interesting because you didn't hear mine. What do you think?
Well, no, because I hear sometimes on different days, I hear different takes from you. That's why
For today.
I'm asking like the weatherman. Okay.
What do you feel today? What's it going to look like in 5 years?
Oh, in 5
Or
years?
4 years, 3 years, 2 years? Next year? Tomorrow?
I think it's like trends with anything else. With fashion and music and taste, I think right now maybe it's self-correcting and we're going back to more classic styles after like going through all of like everyone is a winemaker and everyone makes, the natty wine craze. Because it's also now Gen Z is coming up. So Gen Z, which we have Gen Z kids, and they don't buy wine. That's not their first thought. They'll buy beer or bigger bang for your buck, they'll buy vodka.
Yeah.
With it.
Yeah. We kind of
Because
talked about
I think right now it's just been, again, so saturated and we're slowly coming out of it and having this self-correction that I'm paying a lot of money for wine that is, excuse my language, kombucha wine. I don't want to pay a lot of money for a kombucha wine. So now if I'm paying money, I want it to taste good. I want it to feel good in my mouth. I want to be able to, if I can still drink it on its own, or I could also pair it easily with like pizza and friends. That'll be worth it. The quality matches it, the experience. So like for them, it's like, it's different, and they are struggling with affordability. I mean, the affordability is like the big topic right now of like, what can we afford? And certainly wine being a luxury item is the first thing to be cut. So I think we're going to have to, I don't think we've seen the bottom yet, basically is what I'm saying, until it kind of comes back around to having more affordable, classic, everyday red wines.
Yeah, and also the point that Sonoma County is a monoculture. I mean, when the wine business goes down, the whole county goes down. There's nothing else. I mean, there's no more manufacturing. There's government jobs, vineyards, wineries, and wine shops, restaurants. But and supplies
So it's
for
tourism centered, but
and
what else
tourism, and tourism's way down.
do they produce?
So I mean, what the square is? Well, I guess the square is dead, really. I mean, all those wine shops, wine tasting rooms, they're not doing the business. Well,
I don't think
I'm
it's
not doing
dead,
it.
but I think it's slowed down. I think on the weekend you still have people from out of town enjoying it, but
Yeah.
it's slowed down compared to what it was like 4 years ago, 3 years ago. What else? I was like, you're about to say
Give a
something.
perspective on a woman's view of this really male-dominant society, this industry. I mean, it's not the most comfortable place for a woman to be.
No, it's not. But I mean, you would just have to be assertive and hold your boundaries and speak up. I mean, that's what I learned. Not be afraid of confrontation. I mean, which I'm not. I've learned over the years. And also be a woman comfortable in your own shoes. Don't, I don't know. I've seen a lot of women winemakers or join the bros. They stand with women. So
Yeah.
when did you first have Coturri?
2011,
Okay.
I'd say. So, I mean,
What was it? Do you remember?
I think it was a Zin.
Yeah.
I did the audio mix on, there was like a Canadian, you remember, like a Canadian
yeah,
brother
yeah.
a long time ago. So-
Wines from here.
Yeah. So the only thing,
You were here. No,
Yeah, you did that. I remember you did the
the only
premiere
thing
in
I
San
had to
Francisco.
do with it is that I did the audio mix, kind of the finishing
Okay.
for it.
Right.
And I just met him on Craigslist. I was looking for side
Ah.
projects, and he was looking for somebody to. Their audio is really horrible on it,
Mm-hmm.
but they were looking for somebody to do that, and I was like, I enjoy these wines, and I know some of these
Nice.
people that are in the documentary, and so I think I actually had them at when they did the premiere of it. I think that was the first.
Oh, in San
wine of-
Francisco? And
yeah, I think that was the first wine of yours that I'd had.
We
I'd
were-
had some of the other ones, Donkey and Goat and
Right.
Brock and
Right.
Hank's. I'd had Hank's wine.
He was in it. No, I remember I'm
Kevin
trying to think.
Kelly was in it.
Yeah, whatever happened to all those?
Yeah.
Wine-
Who else? Derek was in it.
Was it something Project Alliance? What am I thinking of?
Natural Process Alliance. Yeah.
They did the stainless steel.
They would do like the kegs and
Yeah, yeah.
pretty early on. Gideon was in it.
Right.
That's right.
Obviously, Alice.
Yeah, she was in it.
That was just an afterthought. They already had it closed down, and then they made an appointment, come up and talk to me.
Okay. Okay.
You're the last
Yeah.
interviewee.
Yeah. And it was already. I think the production was almost stopped. And one brother already went back to Canada.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was
Okay.
like Martine.
Yeah, I only met one of them ever.
Because you were on the finishing side. I think the two brothers did the actual filming of the documentary, and then one went back and one stayed for the finish.
Yeah. Yeah. I basically, I got the edit and like, hey, make this sound better.
Yeah. The good old
Yeah.
days.
Time's strange.
Uh,
Cool. I really appreciate you taking the time with me here.
Oh, yeah.
It's great to hear the story.
So we couldn't get Jane out here because she's the heir apparent.
Yeah, he's been putting her through a basic training,
Oh, nice.
making her Wash, rinse,
wash the
repeat.
barrels.
Okay. Okay.
Sterilize
Start at the bottom.
hoses,
Yeah.
like everything.
Learn it all.
Well, Felshi knows how to do everything now, but
Keep it clean.
Yeah.
you know, the real side of winemaking.
You want to taste a couple wines out of the barrel, or you
Sure.
You want to
Yeah.
taste some wines out of the barrel? You want to take a look at them?
Sure.
Grab your glasses.
77 Gamay, huh?
Yeah.
Still going.
Yeah. I mean, it's been open for 3 hours almost.
Yeah.
It's
Getting
still.
better.
They'll probably even be better. His wines are better like in 2 or 3 days. I always swear by that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really good.
Gina, try this.
Leave it.
Right here. So this is the, this is the 24 Grenache Mourvedre blend.
Still tastes really young.
I know.
Oh.
That's why I haven't bottled it.
Yeah.
And it's like this. It's like it isn't settled into itself,
Yeah.
but it needs the bottle. High acid, residual sugar,
Yeah. There's a little sugar left in there.
but it's not
That's good
effervescent.
though. No.
I don't know. Then there's
So young. Yeah. Interesting.
Okay.
21st state.
Just feels like it needs more time too. Super young.
But how long can you wait?
Well, I mean, you know much better.
No, but I mean
Yeah.
that's the,
It's-
that's
yeah,
the
the smell
problem. You know,
bottle.
is it would it be better in the bottle because
Oh.
the act of bottling it, because we use the 4 bottle thing, so it puts a lot of air on it. Will even some of that out, and maybe bottle age.
Right. This is everything.
Yeah,
This is or blended.
the final blend hasn't been made just
Okay.
because we couldn't. We only could, So this is primarily the Carignan and the Primitivo.
Okay.
Zinfandel. Got that Primitivo Carinan's got a little rose color to it, rosy flavor.
It's really nice. Really beautiful. This also kind of, I mean,
It's the way it should be. I
yeah.
mean,
The tannins feel pretty good on this too.
Yeah.
Petit Syrah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah.
they're there, but they're not not overwhelming.
They're
or
not
like
chalky. That
yeah. Really good.
These are all from the test vineyard.
All from Testa. Really nice. Thanks for sharing.
Well, yeah.
Thanks for listening today. Tony is making original California style wines with ripe fruit that can age well, the way he was taught. Always nothing added up on Sonoma Mountain. You can find them at CoturriWinery.com or follow the winery at Coturri_winery. And follow the podcast on wherever you're listening and the Instagram at IndieWinePodcast. And feel free to email IndieWinePodcast@gmail.com with comments, questions, or feedback. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd love if you told a friend or wine lover about it and help spread the word. Rating, reviewing, or donating at patreon.com/IndieWinePodcast helps a lot too. There's also Venmo for one-time donations if you don't want another subscription. It all goes to offsetting podcast expenses, keeps it ad-free, available for everyone, and allows for more episodes. We'll be back soon with another episode. Have a good one.